Welcome. Excited to be with you today to talk about Canva and getting into Canva Code. So creating interactive activities right within Canva. So this is a great platform for design. We think of it for editing photos, for making great presentations, but there's a whole AI tool integration piece that is really easy to use and create some wonderful activities that students can interact with and or students can create. So this is a favorite session of mine. I'm going to dive in. We're going to talk through some things. My name is Nathan Wells. I work for Digital Labs. And as a director for Digital Labs, I get to do all kinds of webinars that are free to you. And you can find those on our digitallabs.com/events page. I'll have that link after a while in the end of the webinar. And then you can also follow us on social media at Digital Labs, whatever social media you follow. And then also I'm at EdTech Wells, and I try to share things that we're doing on there as well. So today we're going to talk about getting students interacting with our content. So I was a middle school social studies teacher, and then I was a tech coach and served and worked with teachers at all different grade levels. And a couple of the elementary schools I got to work at, there would always be these content areas that were a little bit harder to understand, especially for like that upper elementary when you start getting into some of those science contents or some of the social studies like I taught that maybe was a little bit drier and wasn't as interactive naturally. So how do we breathe some life into those and help them be interactive? And then with some of those elementary classes, there was some areas that we needed students to really continuously practice so that they could get better, so they could maintain reading and moving forward and all that kind of stuff. So how can we do that? And what's beautiful with Canva Code is as you're starting to see in a lot of AIs out there, you don't need to know coding. You can develop some really amazing things very quickly. What sometimes is referred to as vibe coding. We're not going to go all the way into vibe coding, but it's got that little bit of a sense to it where we can give a chatbot, in this sense, right within Canva, a prompt, an idea, and we can iterate on that idea, and it will develop this amazing little sidebar. We'll see it as we're using the chat box. It'll start developing it for us right there, and then we can export that or save that and have others interact with it, which is pretty cool. So some ideas. So think of Canva Code as an assistant. So you're telling this coder, right, this programmer, I wish I had this in my classroom. And it will do it for you. You can actually watch the code if you want to as it's going through. You use plain English and it does all the coding for you, which is amazing. It means we get an interactive content without us needing to know all the background and all of those things. And it really creates engaging students. So we're going to start with something simple, and I would encourage you to work along. So if you are with me live, go to canva.com. If you're watching the recording, maybe pause for a second, make sure you're logged in with your education account and get to Canva, and let's start creating. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the Canva homepage, I'm going to use this top bar at the very top here. I'm going to click Canva AI. Now there's a lot of different things within Canva AI that you can do, whether having it help you create and edit images, create videos, presentations, documents, all those things. But for this, I'm going to click on the little option here that says code. So now it just like gears it towards, it knows I'm wanting to interact with a coding element. I'm going to create something. And you may see if you scroll down, it gives you some ideas. So we can create a historical timeline, a 3D game exploring space, confetti, right? So some things. We're going to do this simple timer. So I can text right here or I can click on it, but let's just say I want a classroom timer with sound and animal celebrations, let's call it, when the time is up. Let's try that. And so maybe you can be creative. Think of your own ideas. I just came up with one randomly off the top of my head. I knew I wanted to do a timer, but I added some things there of what I wanted it to do. So let's see how that works. So you can see, all right, it's generating some code. It's putting that together for us. In a moment, we're going to see that as kind of a sidebar where we have our chat side by side with this element, this code, this new interactive element that we can interact with and try and experience. And as we try it, we can do some trial and error. We can iterate and say, all right, Canva code, I like that it does this. Now please do this. So we can ask it to make some changes. We can do that in real time, and it will update as we go, which is really cool to see. And so we can see it's still working on that. And even though this is a simple timer, it's going through and pulling out all those different things. And no matter what type of activity you do, it's going to go through this same process and create that for you, which is pretty awesome. So we'll see what this looks like. It should be about done. The times I've done this before, this one usually goes pretty quickly. I'm also at the end going to give you a link and also a QR code so that you can get some ideas. It has some different widget templates and ideas of prompts that you can use to create other classroom activities. So here it gave us a nice timer. I like how it has the breakdowns of the different times. If I had some that I normally do, maybe I use 3 minutes a lot in my class. I could ask it to add that one. I can go that plus and minus 30 seconds. So I appreciate that it does 30 seconds. That's kind of cool. And then let's just do 30 seconds. Doesn't look like I can go any less. Something I might ask it to do is add a section where I can type. So that way I can just do 10 seconds. But let's say we did 30 seconds. So you can see I like the little visual. I didn't tell it to do that, right? That's kind of cool. Has a nice little visual there as it's running down. And then we'll see if it does have the sound. Make sure my sound is on. The sound like we asked it to do. And then let's see what it does with the animals. What did I say? Oh, I like the little shaking. That's kind of fun. 3, 2, 1. Oh, cute. So that's not what I had in mind, but it's kind of cute. It has a little confetti and animal celebrations. And it was really, really quiet noise. So you probably didn't hear that across the webinar. But it did make noise. So I might have to adjust my speakers or something for that. So awesome. And then I can go in and reset that and then change it. And it does look like I can ask it, all right, change it to this, the color, the name, let me type the time I want, right? And so then it'll iterate on that and fix that within there. How many minutes you want, perfect. So it'll keep going on that, and you can go back and forth and you can iterate as many times as you want, which is really helpful, and ask it to do these different activities. So we'll check on that in just a second. So some other ideas that you might want to do is choose your own adventure. This one's kind of fun. So if you remember, depending on when you grew up, so when I grew up, one of the popular things is I would go to the library, or one of the things I enjoyed, I should say, is I would go to the library and we would check out these choose your own adventure books. So it was like an adventure style book, and you would get to a spot and you would choose. If you're going to go this path, you would skip over to this page. If you're going to choose another path, you would skip to that page, right? And then the story would continue from there, and you could skip back and forth the pages. Well, you can create that now, which I thought was a fun way to do it. So you can create that using Canva Code. Oh, see, it got messed up a little bit here, so I might ask you to change something. That's okay. So let's go back to our coding. And so we can ask it to create a choose your own adventure story generator for elementary age, which is kind of fun. And so now it's going to work through that widget, right? So putting together something like that and helping come up with a choose your own adventure story. And this one is fun. And you could, what I didn't do is give it a theme, give it characters, a setting, right? I didn't give it any of that. So it's going to be very generic and kind of create it on its own, which is kind of cool. And so you could have it do that. And then you could go in and continue to make edits and ask it to change the theme and all of those types of things. So that's something we'll check on again in a second after it's doing that. The other one for maybe a middle school is a virtual science experiment lab. So we have, elements that we want to work with, different mixtures. We want students to see how they do. But we can't always do those physically without some dangerous elements happening, right? So we can create a virtual lab. A very basic one I created was this pH tube scale to check out. So I could have students put in lemon juice and look at that. It fills it up, and then I can see it moving across it. Oh, that's very acidic, right? But then I could click coffee, like, oh, it's a little acidic, a little above neutral, but it's not, crazy. Water, well, that should be very neutral. Soap, oh, now we're going towards a basic, right? A base. And so I can see as I click on those, it gives me that visual of where they sit. And you notice underneath it, it's giving us the levels, some things about it, and I can reset that. And it captured those down here in the spreadsheet as I go. So you see when I click bleach, it's 12 is the pH level, the color observed, classificate, right? So it does all those things for me. And maybe I could ask it to not do this at the bottom. That might be one edit, is I want students to actually record that themselves. So instead of it just doing it for them, maybe I go in and ask it to not do that. But I can see here what it comes up with as I click on each one. And I can keep track of that, and then students can review that at the end. So that's an interactive element. And now notice too, I'm in the middle of a presentation. So we can embed these interactive activities in presentations, in websites, or just standalone and have students interact with them, which is kind of cool. So they become interactive elements that we can take lots of places. Let's check on our story. Awesome. So pick a world and write your own story. All right. So that's kind of cool. So it gave me some. And I could go in, I can iterate a little bit and say, make sure that it's, this is the theme, this is what we're going to do. So let's do Enchanted Forest. So, and notice it's at an elementary level, so basic reading. So magical forest, trees grow, glow. Hold my tiny fair. Oh, cute. All right. So follow the path of the trail, glowing mushrooms, or chase the fox. All right, I'm gonna chase the fox. So the fox leads you to a sparkling river and a beautiful river, right? So I'm gonna choose the next one. So this is kind of cute. So it keeps them engaged. They're reading, and then they have to make a choice. So it's not just reading. And I can ask it to up that reading level too. So maybe this is too simple, or we want it twice that length. Each reading section should be twice as long, or something like that. You can ask it to do those things. Now notice the little taskbar at the top, or the status bar of how long they are. So I'm already halfway through this reading activity. So that may be something I ask Canva Code to do. Now, but let's say I love it. Let's say this is great. Okay, awesome. I want to share this with my students. So just like you saw in my presentation with the pH, I can click publish, and I can do a couple of things. I can either grab the, go back, let me click it again so you can see it. There we go. So if I have a site address, I've already have set up, you can do that. Or I can go to settings instead, and I can just click publish. And it's going to want me to use that. Or I can use in design. This is much easier for the majority of us if we don't have a website set up and we don't want to worry about all that. This is the easier aspect of that, is use in a design. So I chose, for the one you saw with the pH balance, is presentation. You can also create a website. So let's say I want to create a website. So there it is. Now it's right there. And I can add more pages or sections to this website. Or let's just publish this website. And I can set this up, and I can call this, story adventure, right? We'll just go with the title that it has on there. Story adventure. And then I can click publish. It's going to publish that for me, right? And if your school has websites already set up for you, it may already have a different, like your school name at the end for you. And then I can click view. And so I would share this link with my students, and then they could go through and use this over and over again and try the different story endings and see where it takes them. It's just an engaging, fun way to have to do the reading that you're probably requiring in class already. And again, like I said, we can go back. I can always go back and make edits to it and update that, so that way students have something else that they're working on. So that's a pretty cool way that you can do it. So some other ideas and thoughts around this is interactive math activities. So if you don't have manipulatives in your class, or you want students to be able to practice with manipulatives, maybe on their own, in centers time, at home, at different times where maybe they don't have access to the ones you're using in class, you could create that. You can see the geometry shape sorter idea, fraction pizza cutter, timeline explorer. I saw an example where somebody went in and created the westward expansion, right? So we can get a Oregon. There we go. Trail gamed idea. And so it'll actually create a version of the Oregon Trail. It's not quite the same as the old game. And I didn't give it a lot of details, right? Everything in coding, everything in prompting is about giving it constraints and details. So one of the prompt frameworks I use a lot is goal. What are you wanting out of this prompt? What's your main goal? I want an Oregon Trail style game. Context, maybe who it's for, age. I didn't give it age, right? The age, the end goal. Like, what am I hoping to accomplish with this? And who's the audience? What's the age range? Source. Do I have a source? So maybe I want to attach something, or I want to copy and paste in some text about the standards I'm using or something like that. Source. And then expectations. So the other thing I could have put here is how long I want the game, how many different sections they need to visit. Is there anything specific I want them to come away with at the end? Maybe there's a little quiz or a takeaway, or something they need to write a reflection on, right? So those are all things I could have put in my Canva code prompt, just like I would use with any other large language model, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, whatever, right? Those four elements, that's a good framework to remember: goal, context, source, and expectations. Helps us write good prompts. So let that generate for a second, and I'll show you what that looks like. PE, you can have an exercise counter. Art, you can have a digital art gallery or a color theory mixer, which is kind of fun. I've seen that one used. They created a color theory mixer where you're like, what, if I put orange and red together, what does that equal, right? Or yellow and orange together, rather. What does that equal? Or things like that, which is kind of fun. So you can break those down and have students work with those. And then some things to kind of think about as you're trying these is pick one lesson. Don't go overboard, right? We don't want to overwhelm ourselves, but try this with something maybe that you have coming up. Maybe a lesson that you didn't have a real interactive activity already put together. So think about that. How could you do that? Maybe use the template. So I'm going to share a template with you in a second that you can use. And then the other thing is have students create templates. So have your students go into Canva, encourage them to go to the Canva AI and create something to help them study. Maybe in a part of a group project that maybe you give them an option. Hey, you can create a presentation, or you can create an interactive study activity that you can then share with your peers in class to help them study. That could be a fun way for them to show their learning based on the widget that they created and shared with everybody. And then, of course, students can also share this amongst themselves. You can share with students, and you can also share with colleagues. So maybe you develop it for your class and it works really well. So you share it with another class and that teacher can use it. So these can be shared easily, especially within a school domain. All right, let's check out our Oregon Trail adventure. Nice, look at this. Years 1848, guide your family 2,000 miles from Independence, Missouri to Oregon's Valley. Awesome. So it knew the context, right? So it understood what I meant by Oregon Trail. So I'm gonna pick what my profession is. I'm gonna be a carpenter. And then we're heading out. Oh, look at the little wagon going. Oh, that's really fun. So Independence, primary launch point. Okay, let's continue on the trail. Okay, so it starts to give me those choices, right? Very Oregon Trail-esque. Rains, thunderstorms were constant danger, lightning. Very cool. So we're gonna make camp. So you waited safely, but you use extra provisions while you're waiting, right? Which we all know what that's like. So buffalo herd appears. Let's try to hunt for food. Yay, we got some meat. Awesome. I've only traveled 59 miles though. Uh-oh, somebody fell sick. So fun, right? So very Oregon Trail-esque. It's not exactly the same as the game, but it kind of gives us that feel, and we're learning things about the journey of westward expansion as we go. Again, I could have entered in an actual standard. I could have put in maybe some specific things I wanted them to interact with or come across, or pause points within their journey that they needed to stop and write a reflection. So we could put in all those things and we can iterate on this already great design. I don't know if you noticed, I just realized, so it has money, how much food, and our health up here, which is awesome. Very much like the Oregon Trail game, which is really fun. So very cool. Got the date. Yeah, that turned out really good, actually. I came up with that one on the fly. That's a really fun one. So I think I will save that one and come back to it later to be able to work with, which is cool. And when I say save, let me clarify. When I go back, when you look at your recent chats, you can see, let's click see all. I can see all the ones I've just done playing with this today. Choose class timer, choose your own adventure story, Oregon Trail inspired game, right? So I can come back to those, and I can also see them right here and try those again another time, which is really fun. So that gives us a chance to do that. And I can see those again from the home page, going to Canva AI and clicking on code. The other fast way to do that is on the left-hand side here, especially if you've used it recently. Canva AI gives you a quick link to that, and then I can click on code. So a couple ways to find all of those widgets you've tried, or you want to get back and work with a different one again. And then of course, if you've added them to a presentation like I did, you can just find your presentation and open that up, and then you'll be able to jump right in like I did with the PH, right? And start using that. Awesome. Well, hopefully this has given you some fun ideas. Feel free, if you're with me virtually in the recording, you can grab that QR code by scanning that, and that will take you to this document. Let's open that up. What this is, actually, let's do it this way so I can zoom in. Yeah, is this gives you a step-by-step template, and it can take you to two things. So one is this classroom widgets page created by the Canva education team. And so you can see some sample widgets and ideas on here. And so this is from the Canva education team, which is awesome. And it even has a link to the teacher community online, and some prompt instructions, kind of helps you get started with some things. So that's awesome. And then I also put in some other ideas and templates or starter prompts to help you get going with some of this. So create an interactive story about, put in whatever you're talking about, start with a sentence, make some choices, right? So you can start customizing it. And here's an example of how you could do that. Another one is a virtual science lab, which we showed you. So you could fill in your specific things maybe you want them to learn about. Math practice, we talked about. Cross-curricular quiz creator, which is kind of fun. So again, just filling in your elements, and of course, changing this to fit what you need. And then some troubleshooting. So if something's not working the way you want it, here's some ideas and ways to get that working. For one, if you're in a presentation like I was, and it's not loading, remember to double click. That's just a troubleshooting tip. If your students are like, it's not doing anything, miss, like, why isn't it going? Double click, and then you should be able to interact. Also, just sometimes just refreshing the browser is all you need to do, and that helps it jump right back in as well. And then there's some other ideas in here, best practices, and just some ideas by grade levels. And then I link to our webinars page. So here's the webinar we're on right now. And then some other ones as they come up will be listed there as well. So that hopefully gives you some ideas and ways you can get started. Love to stay connected with you. So if you have any any future events you'd like to be aware of, you can sign up for our newsletter at fidgetlabs.com/subscribe. That QR code takes you to our link tree, which is just linktree tr.ee/visuallabs. That links to all of our social. Gives you an email address if you want to reach out to somebody and ask us to come do AI training or Canva training or anything else. Find out what we're doing and how we can support you and your school system. And then, of course, you can stay with us on social. So again, my name is Nathan. Thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes and learning about Canva Code. Hopefully this gives you some ideas and some ways you can use this right away. Thanks, everybody. Take care.